Hey, it's Kisha here with Defending the Early Years podcast. We'll be focusing on amplifying the voices of early childhood educators, advocates, and all of those who love children.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast with Kisha Reid. Today, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Alison Bomba. I hope I said that correctly because I really love the way that sounds. Dr. Alison is a psychologist, author, speaker, consultant, and so active in the community. I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Allison as we both attended I guess I would call it a stakeholder meeting for those who were interested in making nature more accessible. And I can't explain it, but for some reason, I was just magnetized to Allison. And we exchanged information. And since then, we haven't caught up because we're two busy people, but being able to see your work and all that you do for the community has really touched me. So, welcome to the Defending the Early Years podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, I just can't wait to get into your work. I know you just recently celebrated 10 years of your own practice, but you've been doing this work since, I believe, 2007. Is that right?
Yep, 2007.
How did you land here? What's your origin story?
Okay, all right. I'll take you way back.
Take me
So I
way
grew
back.
up in a very small town outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, and I relocated to the DC area to go to graduate school and just stayed. I ended up living in different parts of Frederick County and really fell in love with downtown Frederick. So that's where I live and work now. But I started in a large group practice in Howard County right after I graduated with my doctorate degree. And I stayed there for 9 years before branching out on my own 10 years ago. So
Wow.
that's the quick and dirty version of the
That's the
story.
quick and dirty. And downtown Frederick is such a tight-knit community. There's so many people working for the greater good. So you picked
Mhm.
a wonderful place. What struck me about your work is that your focus is on children, adolescents, and young adults. And right now, and also that connection with nature that we talked about in that meeting. But right now, what stands out to me is that so many children aren't having access to nature. So many adults aren't getting access to nature. And
Mhm.
we're starting to lose that connection I think that we need to be healthy humans. So I don't know if you've seen a shift with that with the young children that you're working with, or you focus on anxiety. I know you focus on grief and
Mhm.
OCD. Have you seen any of these trends shifting with the current and hopefully changing lack of access to nature?
I don't know if I've necessarily really paid enough attention, to be honest with you, to notice the shifts that may not be taking place. But I've always noticed the connection in the work that I do, and with nature-based play specifically. I'll give you an example. So I have a specialty practice. So I work with children, teenagers, and young adults who are either grieving or who would benefit from exposure based cognitive behavioral therapy. And exposure therapy is all about encouraging brave behavior and building distress tolerance, right? So I'm helping children face fears gradually and learning that anxiety is tolerable and temporary. And nature based play creates these natural moments, right? They get
Yes.
muddy, they're climbing higher, they're encountering bugs, they're dealing with weather. All of these things build resilience and flexibility. So I've always seen that connection there. So I'm always encouraging outdoor play and time spent in nature.
And I love that you said that because when I'm working alongside children and I start with them at the beginning of the year. I have a specific example. When we first opened our current location, where we're on 300 acres at Claggett Retreat Center, we would take the children to our spot that we call the Oasis that we've created down in the forest. And I remember the first couple times we walked there, the children were, not all of them, but a good chunk of the children were terrified. They were
Mm-hmm.
like, one of the kids was like, is this the tree tunnel? Are we doomed? They were terrified. But watching the progress as they made those connections, as they took those risks, as they experienced natural elements and the sensory that goes into experiencing that time and time again, and how that shifted them, how that shifted their confidence, how their anxiety. It's like when I take the children into nature with just nature, like we don't bring anything with us, with just nature, it's this sense of adventure, but I try to say it's like they're in a bubble of calm. There's
Mm.
adventure, there's challenge, and you can hear laughter and shouting, but there's this bubble of calm that comes over them once they get past that initial discomfort or fear or I guess sense of not knowing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess it's in a sense we're doing exposure therapy. I think a lot of what we
Mm-hmm.
do mimics what you do with your clients.
I think so too. And you bring up a really good point. I think that there has been so much focus on screen time with youth, right, in the last however many years. And so kids, I don't think they just don't have the opportunity or don't take the opportunity to be outside as much in nature
Mhm.
and to do nothing in nature.
Yes.
That more unstructured time. I
Mhm,
love that you said that you don't take anything with you, just kind of
mhm,
go out and you're just present.
mhm.
So that's pretty impactful.
Yes, and I read something of
Mhm.
yours not too long ago this summer, and I was like, "Yes," because it hit on the fact that children are now, it's summertime, they're not in these overstructured days, and they're
Mhm.
now faced with unstructured, open-ended time. And it
Mhm.
reminded parents that you don't have to fill that time with amusement after amusement. And that really struck home with me because children aren't getting the time and space to be bored and like create
Right.
original ideas and use their imagination. And this is all the way up. I'm not just talking about preschool age children. I'm talking about
Mhm.
big kids too.
Mhm.
So that exercise of the brain isn't taking place as much these days. So I love that, the idea that we don't need to be entertaining or over scheduling children. What have you seen is the result of over scheduling? Because I think that's a common practice that maybe people don't. I think it's with good intention, right? We want our children to have
Mhm.
everything we didn't have. We want them to be exposed to all the things that they would enjoy doing. But have you seen any negative impact from over scheduling or over entertaining?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we as adults can notice, the negative impacts when we overschedule ourselves, right? And I think you're right. I think a lot of times adults are overscheduling kids with good intentions to give them all these wonderful opportunities. But I mean, the negative effects range from just basic lack of sleep, right? Like there's not enough hours in the day to get the recommended
Mhm.
amount of sleep for optimal brain functioning. Um, Kids are often stressed or burnt out. It's tricky to strike a balance there, but I hear a lot of kids report that they feel overwhelmed with too many activities or just not enough downtime.
Mhm. Yes.
Mhm.
Time to just be with self, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, the boredom, I think a lot of kids just don't know how to be bored, and so it's just so interesting, and I see this again with adults too, but just look in a waiting room, right? I mean,
Mm.
people are on their phones when they have to wait for 2 minutes for their provider to come out when they're at the doctor's or something, right?
Yeah,
We
or
just don't know how to just sit in silence and be
Mhm.
mindful and wait.
Yeah. Yeah, or when you're taking
Mhm.
a short drive and
Yep.
the iPad is used for the children,
Mhm.
or what really I think is a lost opportunity is when children are on their iPads at a restaurant, or
Mhm.
the other day I was at the grocery store and there was there was a child. She was sitting in the cart and she was into whatever was on her iPad, and she was with dad and he was shopping and shopping, and he walked away for a second to go grab something, and in that second she looked up, and it was almost like she didn't even know where she was. She freaked out because dad wasn't there, but also it was this look like, where am I?
Mhm.
What's going on around me? And I think that's what's happening. We're missing life. Like, people are
Mhm.
and I say we because I mean everybody's on their phones too much. We're
Yeah.
missing life. The things that you learn from being a part of grocery shopping, for example, just witnessing how to order food at a restaurant, how
Mhm.
conversations and happen, the nuance in speech is drifting away. And I think in that overscheduling and that over screen time, especially for teens with social media, we're getting a lot of children who are becoming extrinsically motivated and
Mhm.
performative, and um, not connected to authentic, organic ideas. And
Mhm.
I guess we can talk about all of the issues, but I would love to also talk about some of the solutions. What do you see are some ways to help, not only help families understand the balance, but also help adolescents when they've reached a point of anxiety, or if they're dealing with grief, or any sort of trauma, or negative impacts.
Yeah, that's a big question, but I can speak to some of it. So I guess going back to the idea that, my main goal with most of the kids that I'm working with is to help them learn how to tolerate difficult emotions, right? So whether that be grief, learning how to navigate grief and learning how to go on despite grief, or whether that be anxiety, or OCD, which certainly contains a lot of anxiety, right? It's about building that distress tolerance so that you can handle more. You have more of a capacity to handle anxiety so that you're not avoiding or escaping those things
Mhm.
that make you anxious.
Mhm.
And it's the same with boredom, with what we're talking about now. I think it's important for kids to build that tolerance to boredom, because not only are there the missed opportunities that we've touched on so far, but there's that missed opportunity for personal connection with your friends and family members, like during meal times, for example, right? So, if I had to provide one recommendation for parents, it would be to remove family accommodation when it comes to anxiety. Anxiety is treated differently than most things, right? With most other situations, if your child's in pain, you want to swoop in and relieve that pain. And that makes sense. And that's a healthy response. But it's not really the same for anxiety. So, for instance, if you're at a restaurant and your child who is developmentally available to order a drink on their own is too anxious to speak. Sometimes parents will speak for that child, or if they are at the grocery store and run into a neighbor and the neighbor speaks directly to the child and the child won't speak back, then the mom or the dad, the parent will speak for the child, right? We really shouldn't do that, because that's sending a message to the child like, this is too hard for you. I don't think you can handle this. So let me do this for you.
Mhm.
Right. And we want to send the opposite message, really. We want to validate the discomfort. We want to validate how hard this is. Like, I know this is tough for you, but I know you can handle it on your own. So it'd
Mm.
be a much healthier response to just not speak for that child,
I
right?
love
And
that.
to really encourage that brave behavior for next time.
Mhm. I love that. Wow. And I experience that often with children wanting to. It's funny though, because they're not shy to me when their parents aren't there. Like, they can tell me whatever they need, what they want, what they think, all those things. But there are instances where They may whisper to their parent to tell me something or ask me something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great point. And I've experienced it both ways. I actually recently experienced where the parent put it back to the child and said, "Oh yeah, I remember you wanted to tell Miss Keisha that. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's great.
You can tell Miss Keisha." And
Mm-hmm.
I felt, and this just happened on Friday, and I felt in that moment, that was good. And she did. She told me,
Mm-hmm.
I did. I felt in that moment like, you go, Dad, because um, you're right. It's giving a message. I think there's a lot of things that we do that if you're not really in tune and really thinking about it, and it's hard to do as a parent every day when you're living life,
Sure.
but it's so valuable and important. Like, it's hard, but it's important to think about the quiet messages that we're giving children. So
Mm-hmm.
also anxiety around um it's not really anxiety, but like the resilience that's built up when you are being allowed to struggle or experience a
Mm-hmm.
challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and no one jumps in and figures it out for you before you get past your frustration. It's just like that practice with experiencing it and the love and support and acknowledgement to get through it, and realizing that you can get through it. But if we don't let them
Absolutely.
have that time, they won't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, for sure. It's such an empowering move, really, right?
Mhm.
Whenever you remove that accommodation and allow your child to be uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
And then when the child's able to master that specific skill, a lot of times we see that kickstarting other things. So now they've mastered one brave thing and they're feeling ready to tackle the next. Right?
That
And it's
that
the same with boredom, like I said before. So removing accommodation there would be not providing that iPad for that, 20-minute car ride. And so that would be uncomfortable and you might get some negative feedback from the child in the back seat, but I mean, the kid's going to be able to handle it. It might not be
exactly.
like the most enjoyable car ride, but
Yeah.
if you do that repeatedly, right,
Mhm.
you build that tolerance and the child will figure out how to wait,
Yep. It
which is
it
a
it
really
is
valuable skill.
it is beautiful and magical. And
Mhm.
I also see that you do specific therapies like play therapy. And I think I saw sand trade therapy as well.
Yeah, so I do incorporate play-based therapies and sand tray therapy, typically in grief and loss work. With anxiety and OCD treatment, that really warrants more exposure-based cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the gold standard. That's the evidence-based treatment that works, where you're getting results. I like to, clarify upfront
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
families first call me that I don't tend to do the loosey-goosey, let's just talk about your feelings, supportive play therapy when it comes to anxiety and OCD because that really does very little.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that therapy, that treatment should be very active and skills based, and it's a family treatment because
Oh,
again, I'm working with the parents just as much as I am working with the child because half the treatment is removing accommodation.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Hmm.
but when I'm working with a really young child, because I do see children as young as 3 years old, and a lot of times that's with grief and loss work, then we will definitely incorporate play therapy and sand tray therapy.
Hmm. A lot
Mhm.
of educators, I often in the group that I host, a lot of times we hear educators posting about a child who's experiencing loss, whether it be a grandparent or a parent or a close friend, and they want to know how to support the child in their environment. Like, what can
Mhm.
I do to help this child who's struggling? They're often looking for books or ways to support them specifically. Do you have any advice for someone who's in that position?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it can be so tricky and scary to talk about death, period, let alone with a young child, right? But um, I I always recommend being honest and age appropriate.
Mm,
So there's a tendency for us to want to protect young children from these scary things in life, including death, right? But it's best just to say, when you're explaining that a person died, just to be very direct to say, this person died, her body stopped working, she can no longer breathe or speak or eat or move. She's dead. And that's it. We don't have to talk a lot. We tend to ramble when we're nervous, many of us,
Mhm.
right? We want to be kind of short and sweet and to the point and very clear. We want to avoid those phrases like she went away or she fell asleep,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? That just leads to confusion and more questions and
Fear.
anxieties, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to keep it simple and let the child lead the discussion, right? So you might make a statement like that and then pause and say, what questions do you have? And just
Mm.
let the child lead. Oftentimes they won't have any questions. They'll just, go off and play, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Now,
Yeah.
what do you say about because we all know that children are, like you said, they're going to go off and play, right? Children are going to play through things that they don't understand or things that they're processing.
Mhm.
What do you say about children who are playing death? They're playing funeral, they're playing um somebody's dead. My children play that all the time, by the way. They're
Mhm.
always playing that somebody's dead or that
Mhm.
I walked up on a conversation one day and it started with a real topic of grandparents. And one child said, well, my grandparents are dead. And then the other one the conversation developed. And then it changed to some imaginary dead people, like, well, my mom and dad are both dead, well, I'll be the mom, you be the dad, and then they're playing these death scenes all over the classroom, which I understand why, and I know that it's
Mhm.
okay. But what do you say about an educator or a parent who sees that and they're completely uncomfortable with it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just about educating them on the possibilities, regarding why children might be playing these scenarios out. Because you're right, it's okay, it's appropriate. Children play out to make sense of things, right? This is how they process things. So whether they've experienced a death themselves or heard of someone experiencing a death or, you know, heard of it in a book or a movie or something like that, right? It's just their way of like meaning making and making sense of the idea, and super normal and typically not anything to be concerned about. I mean, if there's a lot of like violence or
Mhm.
aggression in their play, that would be worth looking into more,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously.
Well,
Mhm.
let's tap on that. I'm glad you said that because I was going to shift to when you said movies or TV. I was going to shift
Mm.
to media and early exposure to things like violence, and I guess just topics that aren't developmentally appropriate or easily processed by young children. What do
Mhm.
you think is the harm in that?
Well, like you said, it's not developmentally appropriate, and so therefore they cannot process it adequately, correctly, right? And can lead to confusion, questions, normalization.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah. So lots of reasons why exposure to violence is not a good thing, not healthy.
Thank you. Oh
Mhm.
my goodness. I really, really, really have enjoyed this. I love your work. And I wanted you to tell us how people can get in contact with you if they're in the local Frederick area and they feel like their child or young adult needs to be seen. If they have any additional questions, all that jazz. How do we find you?
Yeah, so my website's probably the easiest place to start. It has all of my contact information. The website is drbomba.com, drbomba.com. But I'm also on social media. I do all the social media things, so Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. But the website has all the contact information.
Wonderful. And I want to thank you for so many years of service and congratulate you on 10 years of running your own practice. That is big.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been really nice chatting with you today.
Wow, I loved it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And have a wonderful time, everybody. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.
And that was another episode of the Defending the Early Years podcast. Defending the Early Years works to support the rights and needs of young children nationally. Learn more at DEY.org. Pay us a visit, sign up for our newsletter, or connect with us on social media. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.